My name is Delaney. I've been an outdoor cooking instructor and a gardener at camp for a few summers, and this summer I was going to be a head counselor.
My name is Martha. I was not going to be working at camp this summer, but I worked the summers of 2016, 17, and 18 as a unit leader and the naturalist.
Today we're going to show you how to bake a couple of pies in honor of the upcoming 4th of July and pie competitions at camp that are not to be this year, but you can still make happen at home.
Woohoo!
Ready to make some pies! Feel flouncy? First things first, you want to make yourself a little paper chef hat.
You take some paper, you measure your head, you staple it so it fits around your head. Now this next part is very complicated. You gotta take the tissue paper, you gotta staple it all the way around the inside so it's nice and puffy. And then it just keeps all your hairs, you know, up out of your face.
Yep.
And you look much cooler. Now you're ready to bake a pie.
Also make sure to get your apron. Not necessary, but highly recommended. Bonus points if it's fun and has interesting colors and makes you look like you're from the 70s.
Hey Delaney!
Yeah!
What kind of pies are we gonna make?
We're gonna make 2 different kinds of pie today. There are plenty of different kinds of pie out there, so we're gonna make 2 kind of different varieties. One is a coconut cream pie in just a normal crust. And then we're also going to make little mini strawberry pies in little muffin tins. You can make little individual ones and you can decorate the top how you want, and it's really fun. So summer is a great time to make berry pies because there's all sorts of fresh berries in season. The stone fruits come into season in another month or two, so the peaches and plums and apricots and that sort of thing. And yeah, so that's the agenda for today.
The first thing you need to do is find your recipe and assemble your ingredients.
Like so. As far as pie crusts go, you have a lot of options. It's not that hard to make, but some people have trouble with it, so it's super fine to just go to the store and buy a pre-made one. Something you want to be aware of is how much your crust should be baked before you put your filling into it. So some crusts need to be completely baked if you're not going to bake the filling anymore once you put it in the crust, and other crusts only need to be partially baked because you'll continue baking it once you put the filling in. So make sure to check your recipe before you completely bake the pie crust and that's not what you're supposed to do or something. Okay, as far as blind baking your pie crust, if that's what your recipe calls for, blind baking pretty much just means make your pie crust and bake it before putting your filling in, which is what we're going to do today for the coconut cream pie, because you make kind of a coconut pudding filling for the pie and then you just put it in the fridge so it doesn't need to go back in the oven. So ingredients for pie crust are super simple, pretty much just flour, salt, ice water, and butter. We're making a gluten-free pie today because I'm very gluten-free, and we're also going to use a little bit of xanthan gum. And again, you can find lots of resources online if you're gluten-free or dairy-free or vegan about how to change your recipe just a little bit to accommodate whatever you need to accommodate. Your ice water really does need to be ice cold, and your butter also needs to be very cold. And it's kind of tricky to explain, but essentially you don't want the butter to melt before you put it in the oven. So you want to start chopping your butter into not quite pea-sized pieces, but maybe like quarter-sized pieces, and then once you have it kind of mixed into the flour mixture, you kind of press the butter with your thumbs so it makes it just helps incorporate it without completely cutting the butter into tiny little pieces, so then it melts really quickly as soon as the warmth of your hands touches it. So you want to keep all your ingredients really cold, and once we make the crust, we're going to put it back in the fridge before we bake it, so that again the butter, the fat in the recipe stays as cold as possible and doesn't just melt right away.
So we mixed the flour and the butter and the ice water with Delaney's hands, and now we have this squishy pie crust. It's okay for there to be some big bits of butter in there, but it should all stick together.
Okay, so we have our lightly floured surface and our rolling pin and our dough. So now I'm going to turn the dough onto the lightly floured surface. We're going to kind of sprinkle the top with some flour and then roll it a couple times so it's like an inch thick, and then you kind of flip it over on itself and you roll it again, and you keep doing that process for a minute or two, and then we're going to end up with two kind of halves of this, and we'll wrap each one in plastic and put it in the fridge to chill for a little while longer. You don't want to press down on the dough too hard. The trick is to think about rolling it with just light pressure as opposed to like pressing down on it. You don't want to like overwork the dough too much. You don't want to work with it too long either, because again, we don't want it to get all melty before it's time to cook it, but it probably won't be a problem unless you're like using your hands a lot here. Alrighty, so we have thoroughly rolled out the dough. I'm gonna cut it in half because we made enough for 2 pie crusts, and I'm gonna put it in the freezer.
A good thing is that pie crust doesn't have any raw eggs in it, so you can eat it raw. Maybe a little weird. It's mostly butter.
It's buttery. It's kind of good.
Hey Delaney,
Yes?
what are we gonna do now?
I'm going to grease the pie dish with some butter. You can use like cooking spray too, but I just like to use butter because I know exactly what's in the butter. There's already butter in the pie crust, and it just works really well. Alright, so you get a little butter. It's best if it's a little warm, but you can use butter right out of the fridge too. And you just rub it around in the pie dish until there's a solid little layer around the bottom and up the sides, and make sure to kind of push it into the corner too.
Hey Delaney,
Hey Martha!
what are we starting on now?
We are preparing muffin tins for our little mini strawberry pies. So we're doing the same thing to these that we did to the last one, the bigger pie. Just get a little bit of butter on a paper towel and rub it into the pie tins, or the little muffin tins you're going to use for your pies.
Woohoo! Delaney has lined our muffin tins that are now pie tins with little bits of beautiful pie crust. And now she is cutting the rest, the extra of the pie crust that is left over, into beautiful little strips that can be woven into a fancy lattice on top of your pies, just for beauty. Pies must be beautiful.
Even if they're not beautiful though, you still tried hard.
They're beautiful no matter what.
That's all that matters.
All pies are beautiful.
Down with perfectionism.
Yes.
This looks good. Let's bake it. So, parchment paper. We'll lay that in there. And then we're gonna get our pie weights to put on top of it. Okay, so a little bit more about how to prepare your pie crust and blind bake it before you prepare the filling. Your pie crust will shrink a little bit once you put it in the oven, again because the butter will start to melt, and so the crust will just kind of shrink a little bit down the pan. But to try to counteract that, again, you chill the crust before putting it in the oven, and you also want to put parchment paper and then some pie weights, or you can use something like dried beans, in the bottom of your crust when you bake it. We're going to use dry brown rice that has been in the pantry for a long time and doesn't taste very good anyways. But if you are using something like rice, you're probably not going to want to eat it afterwards as regular rice, but you can always just keep it in the pantry as a pie weight to use at a future time. They also sell actual real pie weights in the store, but if you don't want to spend money on silly things like that, then just use rice or popcorn kernels or dried beans. And that helps it not puff up in the bottom. It'll kind of puff up a little bit because as the butter melts, it'll create steam, and that helps to make a flaky crust, but it also means it shrinks a little bit and it'll try to like get all puffy in the oven. So that's why you use some parchment paper and weights. So if you are putting weights in the bottom of the crust so that the kind of the bottom of it doesn't get all puffy before it's done baking, you want to only leave it in there for 10 minutes or so, and then you'll take it out, take the parchment paper and the pie weights out, prick the bottom of the crust with a fork a few times, which will help the steam escape. Then you put it back in the oven for another couple of minutes, like 5 to 10, depends how well you want it to be baked. And then that'll make sure that the bottom gets baked as evenly as the sides.
Delaney, what are we doing now?
Our pie crust is done, so we're going to pull it out and look at it. Beautiful. And then we're going to set it to cool on a wire rack, and then we'll pour the filling inside the cooled crust in a little while.
That's what we're doing. While you're blind baking your crust, you can bake the scraps and have snacks.
You deserve it.
You
You're
do.
working hard.
Good news, team. We're done with the first part of the pie crusts.
Which is the most difficult and dynamic part. So once you're that underway, you're good to go. And again, you can skip all that mayhem if you so choose by buying a crust from the store. Totally up to you.
This means we have to clean up a little bit before we can start on the filling, but it's
Which
okay.
is a good thing to do, and if you remember from outdoor cooking, you all need to do your dishes before we can enjoy what we made.
Right, now I'm going to make the coconut filling for our coconut cream pie. So first of all, you're going to separate a few eggs, which means you crack the egg and then toss the yolk back and forth between the two halves of the shell until the yolks are in one bowl and the whites are in another. Now whisk the yolks with cornstarch and set it aside. In a saucepan over medium heat, combine coconut milk, half and half, sugar and salt, whisk it occasionally, bring it to a boil, and then boil for about 2 minutes. Now reduce the temperature to medium-low, remove about a half cup of the mixture on the stove, and whisk it into the egg yolk cornstarch mixture. The trick here is to whisk really quickly because the heat from the mixture on the stove can actually cook the eggs, which you don't want, so just whisk it vigorously until it's all nice and incorporated. Now pour the egg yolk mixture back into the pan in a steady stream. Again, whisk it steadily, and be careful because it'll be hot and you don't want to get splashed or burned, and the mixture will start to thicken. So once it's all incorporated, keep whisking it and cook for about 30 more seconds. Now remove the whole thing from heat, stir in butter, vanilla, and coconut, and when that's all done, you're good to go and ready to pour your warm filling into the cooled pie crust. Okay, now we're going to make our muffin tin fresh strawberry pies. So we're using the same pie crust here that we used for the coconut pie, which makes things much easier. So you start the same way. You roll out your crust pretty thin, and then you use a cookie cutter or a glass and you cut little circles in it. Then you press those circles of dough into the greased muffin tin, and you can press a little bit more dough at the sides if the glass or the cookie cutter wasn't quite big enough. Now to make the filling, you're going to wash and cut your strawberries. You can either slice them or dice them into little chunks. Now mix those in with sugar, lemon juice, lemon zest, cornstarch, and vanilla in a bowl and mix it all together. Now you're ready to fill your little muffin tin pies and put them in the oven.
Got a beautiful strawberry mixture with all the good stuff in it. We're gonna fill our tiny cute little pie crusts with the strawberry mixture. Ooh, that's a lot. Now we're gonna have some extras. Ooh. The recipe says 3/4 of the way full, but that's like 2 pieces of strawberry.
However, we're not going to blind bake it this time because the filling has to bake as well. We're just going to put the raw pie dough into the muffin tins and then the mixture inside of that, and then put the whole thing in the oven. Muffin tins will transmit heat pretty well, so the crust will cook fairly quickly. And again, the filling has to bake too, so it all works out.
Hey Delaney,
Yes.
what are we doing now?
We're gonna take our strawberry pies out of the oven. It is time.
Woo!
Let's begin. exciting.
Hey Delaney,
Hey!
what are we doing now?
Making homemade whipped cream to put on top of our pies.
Wow!
So, gonna get our beaters ready. Gonna pour in some heavy whipping cream. You can just kind of approximate this stuff, but if you'd like to measure it out, that's great too.
Lots.
Beautiful. Splash of vanilla. You could also use extra coconut extract or something like that to do an interesting flavor. And a little bit of granulated sugar. And mix it up until you get kind of medium peaks. So when you lift the beater out, it doesn't kind of fall right back in like liquid, and it's not super stiff either. It's kind of medium. Got to give ourselves an award too, though.
Oh my god.
So,
Now, do they get to give us an award?
ooh, that'd be fun. Start thinking. If anybody's got any ideas for coconut cream pie and mini strawberry pies,
Based only on how they look, I guess. Professional.
assume they taste fantastic. Something like that. It's been a pleasure working with you today. We would love to see some of the projects that you guys are making at home, whether pie or anything else. Yeah, so take a video, take a picture, or just let us know here at the Camp Nor'Wester community what you're doing and how you're doing. All right, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time.